So we have a tradition at Collective where we start each new year by celebrating some of the big things that God had done in the previous year. And I know that some of you are all in on 2025. You want to leave 2024 behind, but I want to look back for a second because last year was just an incredible year. In 2024, we actually kicked off the year by renovating this auditorium, removing the walls, and creating more space in here because the staff and elders of Collective, we all felt like God was saying, create more room. And we wanted to create more room for people to experience Jesus and be a part of this church. And God did that and more last year. We had over 1,400 first and second time guests. We started the year averaging 136 kids a week in Collective Kids, and we ended the year averaging 212. Can we give it up for our Collective Kids team? It's a lot of kids. Youth Collective, which is for our middle schoolers and high schoolers, doubled in size from spring to the fall. Our team, meaning the people who serve here throughout the week and serve on Sunday mornings, grew by over 100 people. We added a third service. We collected and donated over 30,000 pounds of food, over 11,000 hygiene items, and over 1,000 toys to our local partners. We gave away over $100,000 in support of church planting, helping people get mental health support, and meeting the needs in our community. And the thing that we celebrate the loudest here are baptisms. We celebrated 65 baptisms last year. And that included our 200th as of church. And those are just the things that are quantifiable. Like, that's just the data. We also saw marriages healed and addictions overcome and community built through vulnerability. We saw people grow in their trust of Jesus. We saw people come back to their faith in Jesus. And we saw people who had never believed in Jesus before put their faith in him. And so 2024 was an incredible year for us. I'm pretty sure I start off every year by saying it was the best year we've ever had, but it was the best year we've ever had. God did far more than what we could ask or imagine, and I cannot wait to see what he has in store for us this year. And so as we jump into 2025, I just want to encourage and challenge us to keep running after Jesus. Let's keep taking next steps to grow our faith. Let's keep inviting people to be a part of this with us and so they can see what grace and truth in their life feels like. And let's keep trusting God, because one thing that we've learned in the 7+ years that we've been a church is that God isn't done with us yet. And we feel that so much about this year. And so last year, incredible, buckle up. Our hope and our prayer is that this year is even better. To kick things off today, we're starting a new series called Digital Hygiene. And I want to let you all know up front that this isn't going to be a series where I talk about how we should abandon all technology because it's evil. Like, I'm mostly convinced robots are going to take over the world at some point, but that's the only time I'm going to slip this into this series. Like, I am not anti-tech, but I am anti-foolishness. I am anti-doing what everyone else in society is doing just because they are doing it. I am anti-refusing to evaluate the impact of things on my life, including technology. The world of tech is changing and advancing faster than ever, and in some ways, it is really cool. When my wife Ray and I bought our first house, one of the things at the top of our list was a refrigerator that would dispense ice, because I never wanted to fill up an ice cube tray again. Right? You fill it up all the way, then they're half full when you go to get ice. It makes no sense. I love living in a house where I can unlock my doors, I can adjust my air conditioning, and I can turn off my bedroom lights from my phone because of apps. I am thankful that I can order Starbucks from an app, and I don't have to go in and say out loud that I want a grande pumpkin spice latte with no whip. Saves me a lot of embarrassment. I appreciate that. What digital technology can do for us is awesome. But because it's awesome, most of us never take the time to consider what digital technology is doing to us. And so over the next few weeks, we're going to talk about the impact that technology has on our spiritual lives. And one of the things that we're doing in this series is we're going to hold a parenting and tech seminar on Saturday, February 1st from 10 to 12 p.m. This is free to be a part of. All you have to do is sign up through the Church Center app. If you don't have the Church Center app, download that, set Collective as your church home. It's a great way to take next steps, to get plugged in, to register for things. It's how we communicate for our small groups that are kicking up in a few weeks as well. If you don't have the app right now, you can head to Next Steps and talk to them. But this is going to be like a 2-hour deep dive into technology. and specifically the impact that it and social media has on our kids. My guess is most of you who are parents grew up the way I did, and you can remember the day that you went on the internet for the first time. Middle school, high school, maybe some of you it was college, right? It was wired. It was not wireless at the time. And the thing is, I think this way and you think this way. We think we know more about tech than what we really do. We think we know more about the internet than what's really going on with what the younger generations are experiencing. And during this seminar, we're going to talk about this stuff. And we're going to have really honest and kind of scary conversations about the world of technology and its impact on our kids. And it's going to come from teachers and professionals who experience this all the time. And so if you are a parent of kids, or you want to be a parent of kids one day, or even if you just want to know because you're like, hey, I'm out of the loop because I didn't have the internet until I was in my 40s, you can join this as well. It's going to be a great opportunity for us to talk about this stuff. And so to really understand what technology does for us, I want to share a quick history of interpersonal communication. Because the ease and convenience that we can communicate with each other is remarkable when you consider where it all began. Right? Starting at the beginning, starting with Adam and Eve, communication was face-to-face. That was your only option. For some of you, you couldn't have lived then because that is your absolute nightmare. But for thousands of years, that was the only way that people could communicate with each other. Then in 900 BC, the first real advancement in communication technology came when China and Greece began using smoke signals to communicate over long distances. A few hundred years later, carrier pigeons were trained to deliver messages, but this form of communication was predominantly like a governmental thing because literacy had to be a part of that. Most people at the time couldn't read, couldn't write, and so it was kind of like a higher echelon type of thing. In 500 BC, it's believed that Queen Atassa of Persia sent the first letter. 500 BC. And then for 2,000 years, nothing really changed. Literacy rates grew, and so letter writing became the dominant form of communication, and this eventually led to the establishment of the United States Postal Service by Benjamin Franklin in the late 1700s. But that's when things started to pick up. In 1840, Morse code was developed, which allowed people to communicate through telegraph. In 1876, the telephone was invented, but it wasn't really accessible. It wasn't something people had in their homes. It wasn't able to call long distance until 1915. In 1973, the first cell phone was invented. 1982, email debuted. 1992, the first text message was sent. In 2007, the first iPhone was released, and in 2010, social media became something you could do on your smartphone. And so when you think about it, in the last 150-ish years, we went from Morse code to being able to call anyone, anywhere, at any time. And looking at communication as our example, we can see what technology can do for us. Technology brings convenience and ease and accessibility, right? And I think it's great when I want to have a conversation with a friend of mine who lives in Kentucky, I don't have to train and send out a carrier pigeon. That's wonderful. Or really for me, I love that I can talk to my phone and send voice messages instead of trying to text the word hey by pressing 4433999. Any of you remember those days? So thankful. Here's the problem though. While technology can bring convenience and ease to our lives, it can also diminish our need for strength, skill, and resilience. For a long time, technology has been a welcome addition to modern life because it makes cooking and traveling and medicine and education easier and more accessible and less difficult. But now we find ourselves in a place where technology is starting to encroach on areas of our lives that were never designed to be easy. They were never designed to require no strength or require no difficulty. Areas like human connection and communication. Areas like romance and intimacy. Areas like self-worth and self-esteem. And as great as technology can be, we are now starting to see the negative impact on a life that is tech-dependent. A recent article in the Journal for Cyberpsychology, Behavior, and Social Networking found that people who spend 3 or more hours a day on social media are clinically more at risk to have mental health issues like anxiety and depression. They also found that 70% of people under 18 said they feel worse about their lives because of the apps they have on their phone. Wired magazine published that 33% of Americans would rather give up sex than their smartphone. The NIH found that 19 to 32-year-olds are 3 times more likely to feel socially isolated because of their social media use. The University of Michigan found that social media makes us angrier, and it doesn't even matter what content we consume. The American Psychological Association found that our hyperconnectivity leads to feelings of stress and exhaustion because we are always accessible. Right? When you got a letter, you just didn't open it. When you used to live with a wired phone, pick it up, put it right back down, hang that thing up. But today, people know where we are 24/7. Multiple studies have found that the advancement of technology has led to a rise in addiction, bullying, and weakened social skills. 50% of married couples say that smartphones have negatively impacted their intimacy because of arguments over screen time, insecurities about who the spouse is talking to, and pornography access and addiction. And over 80% of divorce cases right now cite social media as one of the main causes. And the thing is, this is data, but you guys knew this. We know this. Technology is one of those weird things that we know the negative impact, but we still engage it. And despite those feelings and despite all this data, screen time is still on the rise. You see, the marketing we get from tech companies is, what can tech do for me? But the more important question is, what does tech do to me? Right? That's the question that we're not asking, but it's the question that we're going to wrestle with over the next few weeks. Today, we're going to be in the book of the Bible called 2 Peter, which was written by the same Peter that we read about in Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and the book of Acts, which tell the story, the biographies of Jesus and the start of the church. Peter is one of Jesus' 3 closest friends. He's the guy who steps out of the boat and walks on water. He's the guy who denies knowing Jesus 3 times after Jesus is arrested. And he's the guy who's kind of the first leader, kind of the first pastor of the church after Jesus resurrects from the dead. And in 2 Peter, he's writing a letter to a group of churches, and he's trying to encourage and challenge them as they face the uncertainty of the future. And here's what Peter writes, starting in verse 3. He says, by his divine power, God has given us everything we need for living a godly life. And really, I could read that, and we could just stop right there, because Peter says, God's given us everything we need to have a godly life. Right? God has given us everything we need to be connected to him. He's given us everything we need to grow in a relationship with him and for him to tell us how he wants us to live. And putting this in context for today, this means we don't need technology to live a godly life. We don't need apps and we don't need the internet. We don't need smartphones to have faith. But because technology is a part of life, we need to have wisdom on how to approach it. And so let's keep reading what Peter says, because I think he speaks into this. Verse 4, he continues, and because of his glory and excellence, he has given us great and precious promises. These are the promises that enable you to share his divine nature and escape the world's corruption caused by human desires. You see, throughout Scripture, God makes these promises to his people. Promises of joy in all circumstances, of grace and endless second chances, of peace and purpose and hope. And so for everyone who surrenders their life to God and puts their faith in Jesus, they share in these promises that come from God and not the world. And Peter's saying the world can't offer joy. It doesn't offer grace and peace and purpose and hope. Only God offers those things. He says that these promises remind us of God's goodness. And he continues in verse 5, he says, in view of all this, make every effort to respond to God's promises. Supplement your faith with a generous provision of moral excellence, and moral excellence with knowledge, and knowledge with self-control, and self-control with patient endurance, and patient endurance with godliness, and godliness with brotherly affection, and brotherly affection with love for one another. In the Greek, which is the original language of the New Testament, that word supplement that Peter uses means to furnish your home. And so Peter says, make every effort to live in God's promises by furnishing the living room of your life with moral excellence and wisdom and self-control and patient endurance and godliness. Verse 8, the more you grow like this, the more productive and useful you will be in your knowledge of the Lord Jesus Christ. But those who fail to develop in this way are short-sighted or blind, forgetting that they have been cleansed from their old sins. So, dear brothers and sisters, work hard to prove that you really are among those God has called and chosen. Do these things, and you will never fall away. Here's what all of this means. It means we have everything we need to have a thriving relationship with God, but we have to put in effort to experience the life that God has for us. It means it's on us to do the work to pursue moral excellence and self-control and patient endurance and brotherly affection. Now think about everything that we just read from Peter in light of what technology does to us. Right? Technology is about ease of life and running after convenience, but Peter says that faith is about making every effort and putting in the work and running after the promises of God. You see, what I'm trying to show us is that the ways we are formed by technology at a deep level is in stark contrast to the way that God is trying to form us in his image. And the byproduct of being formed by technology is that it produces practices and habits that go directly against the very things that Peter says are required to live a godly life. So here's the first thing I want you to write down this morning. The more we allow digital technology to form the habits of our lives, the less likely we are to live in the promises of God. The more you allow digital technology to form the habits of your life, the less likely you are to live in the promises of God and to experience the life that you are designed for. Now, let me make this incredibly clear. Grace is a gift. So I'm not saying that we have to work to earn God's love. I'm not saying that we have to work to earn salvation. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what Peter was saying. But Pastor Dallas Willard said it like this: grace is not opposed to effort, it is opposed to earning. Meaning we receive God's grace as a free gift by putting our faith in Jesus, by trusting in the work on the cross to cover our sins and his proving that he is the Son of God when he resurrected from the dead. And so when we repent or we turn away from our sin and declare that Jesus is our leader and forgiver and we are baptized in his name, we receive the gift of grace. And there is still effort involved to participate in a life with God once we receive that gift. But we don't do anything to earn it. So when Peter says put effort toward these things, he's not negating the gift of grace. He is calling you to put in effort when it comes to your relationship with Jesus, to put effort into your faith, to put effort into living a grace-filled life. And this morning, some of you are going to have very practical action steps to put effort into growing your faith in light of how technology is getting in the way. But for some of you, the effort that God is calling you to is surrender. It's to surrender to the love of God and get baptized like CJ did at first service and Jennifer is doing at this service and Macy's doing at third service today. It's checking the baptism box on your connection card saying, I know I'm a mess and I need Jesus to make me right. And this isn't about anything that you can do. It's about the love of God poured out on the cross. And for some of you, that is the effort that God is asking you to do this morning. You see, what you can experience in Jesus through effort is so much more satisfying than the life our devices could ever produce. What is available to you in God is so much richer than the unguarded life that our technology and toys could ever bring us. And when you have some digital hygiene, it helps you go from technology shaping you into a person that you don't want to become to experiencing the fullness of what Peter is writing in this letter. We go from reckless indulgence to self-control. We go from instant gratification to never really being satisfied to experiencing patient endurance and growth. You see, our screens shape our behavior by pushing the pressure of now. Our screens overload our choices that we could have, which inevitably makes us less happy with the choices we do make. It makes our already vain society even more image-obsessed and insecure. It gives many of us a counterfeit connection with other people, creating a facade of relationship instead of experiencing the complexity of real human relationships that are both beautiful and difficult. See, Peter wrote this letter to urge the church to live wisely as they moved into an unknown future, and that's what I want for us as well. Algorithms tell us how to feel and what to think about the world. Algorithms tell us how to view ourselves and view others. But Peter says, make every effort to respond to God's promises. Peter says, work hard to prove that we belong to God. So what is shaping your life? Even if you're not a follower of Jesus, this is really important to know. 91% of the media we consume is run by 6 companies with 27 executives at the top. And so let me ask you, are you being shaped by the algorithms of companies who make money keeping you addicted and angry, or are you being shaped by the God of the universe who died to save you and wants to teach you what an abundant life looks like? So that instead of feeling shame about the fact that your body doesn't look like that person online, what if you turned your attention to the Word of God that says you were knit in your mother's womb on purpose and for a purpose by a God who loves you unconditionally? Instead of feeling like a failure or an imposter every time you open up social media, what if you focus on James 1 that says you are God's prized possession, or Romans 8 that says with God you are more than able? What if instead of feeling bitterness and rage towards people every time you see that they're having another baby or they're getting engaged because you're not? What if you took a moment to focus on Psalm 23 that says God is a good shepherd who will guide you on the right paths? and his goodness and his mercy will follow you all the days of your life. For us to become who God created us to be, we have to work to undo some of the ways that we've been unintentionally formed by tech so that the ultimate shaping of who we are is done by God and not our devices. And I don't care if your Instagram account is only Baltimore Ravens hype videos and cooking recipes. I don't care if YouTube is just workout videos and puppy content. Right? We are undeniably being formed by our devices, so we have to consider the implications if we go with that blindly. And if you are a follower of Jesus, wise discernment around technology is a non-negotiable for what it means to live out and experience the promises of God in 2025. It's a non-negotiable. Now, I know some of you are getting defensive, right? You're already starting to think, Michael, are you telling me that I have to live like the Amish? Right? Are you telling me I need to get rid of I want to go back to a flip phone? The sliders were pretty cool, I'm just going to say. Right? Are you telling me that I have to use MapQuest again? Right, for those of you under 30, MapQuest was a website that you'd put directions into. You'd print them out and you'd follow them step by step and you'd still get lost. And so, no, I'm not saying that we should go back to that life. Right? I need technology in my life. A few years ago, I was at a retreat in Virginia where I didn't have cell service. And for the 3 days I was there, it was pretty cool. But then I tried to drive home. And assuming I would get service at some point, I just started driving in a direction that I felt was north. I was like, Frederick seems that way. Let's just go that way. And so 10 minutes into the drive, no service. 20 minutes, no service. 30 minutes, no service. After driving for 45 minutes, I still didn't have service. And now I was just in the middle of nowhere. There were no homes, no businesses. There were no road signs. It was farms and mountains. And so I kept driving, and I drove for another 10 minutes until I found a fire station, and I pulled into the parking lot to try to figure out what was going on, why my phone wasn't working. So I grabbed my phone, I turned it off, turned it back on again, still no service. And so I went into the settings to see what was going on, and I realized that at some point over that weekend, I had turned off my own cellular data, which is why I didn't have service, so it's completely my fault. And so I turned my cell phone back on. I put the name of the fire station into Google Maps to figure out where I was. And I was essentially like on my way to Canada. Like I was just like north. And so what was supposed to be a 90-minute drive home, I took the scenic route and it took me 3 hours. So I'm not saying let's get rid of all tech. What I am saying is that digital hygiene requires that we use these tools wisely. And so here's our application for today. This is the takeaway. This is the homework. We need to create digital boundaries. We need to create digital boundaries because we need to make sure that we have a healthy approach to technology and that we are in control of our tech and our tech is not in control of us. And I'm going to actually give you a few examples of what these boundaries could look like, but my guess is you already know what you need to set up. Because there are times when you're on social media. There are times when you're binging something on TV or you're spending time on those websites you know you shouldn't be on. You're playing games as a form of escapism. And when you finally put the phone down or turn the TV off or shut the laptop, you get that feeling deep in your soul that something isn't right. And you've thought to yourself, I need to stop doing this. You've thought to yourself, I don't feel better after partaking in that. And so my guess is you already know what boundaries you need to create. But to help, I'm still going to offer a few of them up. And so I want to encourage you to pick one digital boundary to put into your life this week. If you're an overachiever, do a couple of them. And I'll say this, even if you aren't a follower of Jesus, doing this will still help you. It'll help you with your mental health. It'll help you with your sense of self. It'll help your marriage and your most important relationships. Right? You can have a ton of questions about Jesus and the church and me, but if you set up a digital boundary, even with those questions, you will watch your life get better. So I got a list. Here's number one. Turn off notifications. Turn off your notifications for everything other than text and phone calls. Maybe email if your job demands it. But some of you check your email so much, you don't actually need your notifications turned on. Some of you check your email multiple times a day, and you still have 10,632 unread emails. So why are you even picking up your phone to check your email? Right? Turn off notifications for things like games and social media and your shopping apps. Diminish the number of red alerts that pop up and watch your life get better. Number two, set app time limits. Your phone and your tablet and your laptop all allow you to set limits for how long you can be on certain apps or run certain programs. I would challenge you to start by setting a 60-minute time limit on all social media and watch how quickly you run out of time. Most of you will burn that 60 minutes before you even get to work, which is a good indicator that social media is playing too big of a role in your life. Set time limits for any app that you know is trying to drift you into a life of distraction and addiction. Number 3, delete apps. Some of you don't need time limits, you just need to delete them off your phone. Right? Delete social media, so the only way you can check it is when you're on a computer, and watch how little you care about all the crap that's on Instagram. Now, you will realize that you pick it up and you scroll because you're bored, not because of anything else. Delete the apps that send you notifications, but you don't actually use. Some of you will open up your phone after service today and you have a bunch of notifications for apps that you just swipe on that you don't even look at. Delete those apps, you don't need them. Delete the apps that tie you to your work when you're supposed to be at home. This is just a suggestion, this is my opinion. If your company isn't paying for your phone, they have no right to inundate your personal life. Once you leave, you're gone. Number 4, use the do not disturb feature. I started using this a few months ago, and it's amazing. I was on a group text, and I was like, man, this one's really annoying. Do not disturb. It was great. I used to just leave group text, and then people would be like, why'd you leave the group text? I'm like, because I hated it, so now I just do not disturb them. Right? Your Teams app, you're at home, it keeps pinging after work hours, do not disturb. You post something on social media, and you find yourself checking every single time there's a notification. You don't want to do that, do not disturb. Put your phone on do not disturb when you get home so the alerts that cry out for your attention go away, and so that you can experience quality time with the people that you long to be with. Number 5, prioritize phone-free evenings, meaning put your phone away when you get home. Have a place set up in your house where you can leave your phone after work or when your kids get home from school. And if this isn't something you could do the whole evening, do it for at least the first 30 minutes that you get home. Do it for the first 30 minutes that your kids are there. Right? Pick a time to do it. Do it during dinner. Do it after you put the kids to bed. Number 6, my favorite one, unfriend and unfollow. I love unfriending people on social media. While my girls were playing with some of their new Christmas toys on Christmas morning, I went through Facebook and unfriended a bunch of people that aren't a part of my life anymore, and it felt good. It was the best gift I could have been given myself. Right? And I know some of you think that's mean. It's not. Right? These are people that aren't a part of my life. Like these aren't people that I engage with. Psychologists have found that you can only handle 150 human relationships at a time, but many of us follow 10 times that many people on social media, and you feel the weight of that every time you open up your phone. Right? So unfriend the people you aren't actually friends with. Unfriend the people who, when you see their posts, you immediately feel anger or bitterness or resentment or cynicism. Unfollow the people and the influencers that you get stuck comparing yourself to. Stop following the accounts on Instagram and TikTok and Twitter that are pornography adjacent. I know there are a lot of people here that say they don't indulge in pornography, but they're still following accounts that bring up all the same feelings just with a little bit of clothes on. Unfollow, delete, stop bringing that thing into your life. Number 7, build phone-free morning routines. That means put your phone in another room when you go to bed. 90% of us reach for our phones right after we wake up, and that's been neurologically proven to be one of the worst things that we can do for our mind and our body. I do this. First thing I do is pick up my phone, and I hate it. It is such a terrible way to start the day by picking up my phone and seeing notifications of things that I have to get done that day. It sets me on a course I don't want to be on. I bring that frustration and anger into my family and getting my girls ready for school. And so just for the sake of accountability, this is one that I'm going to try this week. Right? I know what some of you are thinking. How are you going to wake up in the morning? I grew up in the 90s, an alarm clock. And I'm going on Amazon to buy one because I don't own one. And if you don't want to do an alarm clock, most of you have an Alexa or a Google Home in your house, and you can set alarms on that to wake you up. But don't let the first thing you look at in the morning be your phone. Number 8, reorganize your apps. This has helped me a lot with my phone. About a year ago, I reorganized my apps so my home screen only contains my most important apps. More importantly, though, it has apps that don't send me notifications all day long that try to grab my attention and pull me in. So my home screen is the Bible app, it's Spotify, it's Notes, it's my calendar, it's Messages, and it's Starbucks, most important ones. On my second screen, organized, I have all my apps for work, all my social media, and all my sports apps. And on my third screen, it's just all the random things that I use a few times a year, travel apps, food apps, financial stuff like that. And I do this so that when I open up my phone and I'm on my home screen, my first screen doesn't have a bunch of little red badges everywhere. right? It just has the ones that are important, which would be my text messages. And so it's one of the ways that I make sure that immediately I don't get drawn into doing things that don't matter. Number 9, stick to one screen at a time. Sometimes my wife and I will turn on a show that we're both watching together, and then 5 minutes in, we're both just scrolling through our phones. Right? We aren't spending time together. We're definitely not spending quality time together. We aren't actually enjoying the show that we say we love. We're just overstimulating our brains as a way of chilling out. Number 10, take a digital break. Pick a day a week where you go a half day or a full day without a phone. If you can't ditch your phone completely, pick a day a week where you take a break from social media, or pick a day a week where you go screenless in your house. For those of you who have kids, take the tablet away and see what happens to them. It's not good. And it proves that they have screens too much, right? Pick a screenless day in your house. Give yourself a digital breather. And so these are just a few ideas that help you set up a digital boundary. And I encourage you to pick one that's personal to you. Maybe pick one that's hard for you to do, that you like the least. Pick that one and put in the effort to have a healthier approach to technology and watch what God can do in your life. Watch how you feel healthier mentally and emotionally. Watch how you stop snapping at your spouse or your friends or your kids when they interrupt you when you're on the phone. Watch how God's voice begins to sound clearer in your life. Right? Watch how you begin to view yourself the way that God views you. The book of Psalms in the Old Testament of the Bible, Psalm 139 is a prayer, and it's a prayer asking God to show us where we need to grow. And the most famous verses in Psalm 139 are 23 and 24, and they go like this: "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. Point out anything in me that offends you, and lead me along the path of everlasting life." We are so obsessed with technology that instead of praying this prayer to God, asking him to know our hearts, with our action and our addictions, we say, "I will search you, O phone. You know what I want. Tempt me and stir my anxious thoughts. Don't show me anything that offends me, and lead me on a path of an entertained life." This is our norm. But the invitation of Jesus in your life is so much more than ease and convenience and entertainment. It's so much richer than algorithms and anxiety and addiction and seeking out approval. It is a life of meaning, of rest in the midst of chaos, of wisdom, of struggle and strength that grows you closer to Jesus. We have been living in this digital experiment long enough to know what you get when you don't have digital boundaries. We feel it every single day of our life. And so set some digital limits and choose to know God more. Let's pray. God, I think we are unaware of just how much technology and social media is hurting us. God, we forget what it was like before screens, before access. God, we forget what it was like before the conveniences that technology has brought in. And because of that, we are missing the fact that it is slowly destroying us. And God, even though we feel that way when we get on social media, and even though we feel that way after binging television, even though we feel that way after staring at a screen all day, most of the time we step away and do nothing about it. And God, because of that, it's impacting our faith. It's impacting our relationships. It's impacting our self-esteem. God, it's impacting our mental and our emotional and our spiritual health. And so, God, my prayer for this series is that we take those feelings that we have deep down inside and we stop ignoring them, and we choose to be aware of the impact that digital technology is having on our lives right now. God, I pray this week that we put in boundaries. God, I pray that we have success in those boundaries, but at the same time, God, I pray that when we fail, because inevitably we will, God, that we feel grace, and we feel the ability to get back up and keep going so we can keep pursuing your promises and keep pursuing faith, and we keep pursuing the life that you have for us. So God, give us the courage to do that this week. God, we're thankful for wisdom. God, we're thankful for the promises that you gave us and that we can live with those promises. But God, help us do the work. God, help us put in the effort. Help us make it a life of pursuing and running after you and not the things of this world. God, we thank you and love you and pray these things in your name. Amen.